One of the most important things in the freedom movement in the 1960s was a private letter that was sent by Robert Welch, who had founded the John Birch Society. After two successive presidential terms by Republican Dwight Eisenhower, the globalists were pretty much able to box the ears of the public, controlling both of the political parties and having them basically dance a fugue. The book that Robert Welch wrote was called The Politician, and it's crucial to understanding that this is not about political parties. The political parties are merely a cockfight, an arranged diversion from the finalization of building a global government.
The Democratic Party and the Republican Party was just like the old patent medicine drummer that used to come around our country. He had two bottles of medicine. He'd play a banjo and he'd sell two bottles of medicine. One of those bottles of medicine was called Hypopolora. And another one of those bottles of medicine was called Low Papa Hara. Finally, somebody around there said, is there any difference in these medicines? Oh, he said, considerable. They're both good, but they're different. He said that Hypopolorum is made from the bark off the tree that we take from the top down. And that Low Papa Harum's made from the bark that we take from the root up. And the only difference that I found between the Democratic leadership and the Republican leadership was that one of them was skinning from the ankle up and the other from the ear down when I got to Congress.
And Eisenhower most proved how evil he is just by placing two anti-American founders of the Council on Foreign Relations, Allen Dulles, was a legal advisor to the League of Nations, which they couldn't get passed by the Senate. He was a director of the Council on Foreign Relations. He was with the Skull and Bones law firm called Sullivan and Cromwell. And even documents made public after the year 2000 revealed that the CIA, under Allen Dulles' orders, had broken into Senator Joseph McCarthy's office, fed disinformation to him in order to discredit him and stop this investigation of communist infiltration of the CIA. And that book happens to be Legacy of Ashes, The History of the CIA by Tim Weiner, and that was 2007. But Allen Dulles was also involved in the coup in Guatemala. He wrote a book against national sovereignty with a man by the name of Hamilton Fish Armstrong. And the title of it was, Can America Stay Neutral? Armstrong was the editor of the Council on Foreign Relations magazine, Foreign Affairs. And speaking of affairs, Allen Dulles' sister, Eleanor, wrote that Allen Dulles had at least 100 extramarital affairs just while he was in the CIA. Eisenhower's other appointment was John Foster Dulles, Secretary of State, and he helped run the World Council of Churches, advocating a world government down to controlling local affairs. And Dulles was chairman and co-founder of a Commission on a Just and Durable Peace for the Federal Council of Churches, and that later was called the National Council of Churches, which I campaigned against way back in 1966 when I was running for state assembly. John Foster Dulles was also chairman of the Carnegie Board for International Peace, trustee for the Rockefeller Foundation, who'd guess, and that was from 1935 to 1952. So 17 years, John Foster Dulles was on the Council on Foreign Relations. He's also a creator of the Foreign Policy Association. But what I'm saying is, without Robert Welch's book, The Politician, few Americans would understand. They would just think the Republican Party was in opposition to the Democratic Party. And actually, the period of Eisenhower's reign during the 50s, there was huge movements towards the completion of the world government, which has been the conspirators or the insiders' plan for hundreds of years. We see it mostly beginning with the Skull and Bones operation in 1832 when it was founded. The background of Eisenhower is really important because without understanding, also involved in this conspiracy was Ronald Wilson Reagan. He was a willful conspirator for this world government for most of his life. The other thing people have to understand is secret societies, exampled by the networks at Yale, and also selected children from an outfit called the 10 Schools Admission Program. During President Ronald Reagan's presidency, when Zimbabwe capital was changed to Harare for the Marxist Robert Mugabe, Bush went there to celebrate. And Skull and Bones Bush said, and I quote, "I want to say on behalf of the Reagan administration that we strongly support the policies you are committed to yourself. We believe that Zimbabwe represents a noble experiment consistent with the U.S. and the principles of the U.S. interest." He said, "I'm proud that my country has played a part in Zimbabwe's young life. I stand in the presence of a genuine statesman, the Prime Minister of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe." And for decades, David Rockefeller and his trilateral team from the Council on Foreign Relations, the Institute of International Affairs from the United Kingdom, not just prodded, but pushed Africa into communism. Bush, after toasting this Marxist terrorist, said the United States is committed in the search for a constructive change to South Africa. That was to put Mandela, a member of the Communist Party there, and terrorizing people with the tire collars. He also made it clear to the communist dictator in Zimbabwe. He says that he was in Moscow 2 days before, and the image that struck him most, one he will never forget, was a magnificent and stately display of Soviet soldiers. So he's making it real clear to Robert Mugabe that his communism and centralization and his terror is permissible, because communism is not the people overthrowing the banking establishment. Communism is a tool of the international bankers to kill, cull, and control the people.